Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms. Today's episode of Epic Realms is going to be a little bit different than usual. As you can see, those of you who are in the live stream, those of you listening, the reason is Gen Con is right around the corner, and I wanted to take this time to talk about the podcast itself. Maybe do a little behind the scenes, if you will. I talk about the show's creation and more. So joining us for this is one of our live stream moderators. He is amazing, and his name right here on Twitch is Octavius with an 8. Thank you for joining me, Oct. I appreciate you being there and here.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
For those that are listening, there's a lot of things that I have mods for in the live stream chat, and Octavius is one of the amazing ones, as well as a few others who we will mention here. Because after the podcast is done being live, we end up doing a Q&A. So during the entirety of the podcast, while it's being live streamed, people are asking questions in the live stream chat. And those get answered after the podcast recording is over. And all of the moderators, depending on who's around that day, will sit down and tediously copy and paste them into a separate file for me to read, so I can go through the questions and not scroll through all of the other chatter and stuff that isn't necessarily relevant. This came about, I believe, was it Pixelnix, Octavius, that mentioned it, I believe? Or was it Bentley that mentioned it?
Yes. Well, I think they both did, but they mentioned that would be a good way to kind of collate things together and make it a little bit easier. And so that way the questions don't get lost or slip through the cracks, and make sure that you have them and everybody's questions get answered and comments get addressed.
And I'm not like scrolling back through miles of chat to try and figure it out. So, and I got to be honest, you guys have been immeasurably helpful, not just for that, but just suggestions, thoughts, questions in the background about these episodes and just the support. So I appreciate you, Octavius. I appreciate Bentley. Bentley also, has been so crucial in helping out with these. So I also want to thank Pixelnix, who's been very supportive. And when she can, obviously, she was one of the people that brought this up and other things, and a big D&D player and super supportive. Lady of the Fae, who comes in and makes sure that people are behaving when she's in there. And of course, my wife, who is also a moderator. The huge support that Curly Girl, aka Holly, has done for me has been freaking awesome on the show. So thank you to all the mods, and Octavius, as you are currently their representative, that goes to you.
They didn't sign up for that. I apologize for nothing.
So what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to talk about the history, a little background of the show, kind of how it got started, where it's going, talk about some of the episodes, some of the guests we've had on in the past. How does that sound to you, Octavius?
That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
So the show's origins. Did I ever tell you the show's origins on the side, outside of what I'm about to?
I mean, somewhat, but not to the extent. I didn't know the exact, premise that you came up with, why you decided to do something like that. I don't really see anything similar. Of course, I haven't really looked, but I think there is some similar things. But you take a unique approach, I think, to each and every one of these. So, yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about why you decided to do this?
Well, I didn't really know much about podcasts a handful of years ago, and I'm talking like 10, when podcasts were first big. I think it was like 10 years ago. But there was a podcast called Fear the Boot that a handful of people I knew listened to. And Fear the Boot was really popular, and it was they just bullshitted about role-playing games in general. And they got so popular that they ended up doing 2 spin-off shows. And one was they were both called Kicked in the Dice Bags. And there was Kicked in the Dice Bags Game Masters Edition and Kicked in the Dice Bags Players Edition, of which my friend was invited to be part of. And he goes, Nick, I've never done this before. I'm perfectly fine talking, but you should be on the show as well because you literally worked in radio. And I said, okay. let's do it. And they invited me on, and so that was kind of the first spiel. Is I did the Kicked in the Dice Bags podcast for, I don't know, I think I did 6 or 7 episodes, and it was really chaotic. And I was like, this has got to be done better. It's got to be, and it's a great show. They're a great cast, and I really enjoyed them. But it spun off, and because there were issues that we had with timing and scheduling and consistency, and I told my friend Adam, who many people know as the Blind GM or Almighty Ursus, I said, why don't we just do our own show? Because we had started just doing our own Kicked in the Dice Bags. We called it the Kicked in the Dice Bags side project. I'm doing air quotes. People listening don't see me doing air quotes, but I was like, the side project of Kicked in the Dice Bags. And it was just whatever we wanted to do. And I said, well, why don't we just do our own show? Like, we have all the tools, we know what we're doing, and we'll call it the Side Project Podcast. And we kind of just did the same stuff we did. We just picked whatever we wanted to talk about geek wise, and we talked about it. And then we moved on and did other, we spun off, and he did like different episodes. I did a couple by myself, and eventually I said, what would make this really cool and it would give our show some credibility is, why don't we do some interviews? Why don't we have people from the gaming industry on? And that's what we did. That's what I did. I set up the first 2, and then from there, he was a writer. Like, that's what he does for a living, is he writes. Like, he's not super published right now. He does a lot of like work for other people. Like, they ask him, hey, do technical writing or whatever. But there was a little project that Ed Greenwood was doing, and he was in on that project because he had sent him a short story he wrote, and Ed liked it and said, hey, would you be interested in doing more? I've got a project coming up. And so we pulled him in. That project fell through ultimately, but we still had this contact with Ed, and I was like, hey, get him on the show. And then he was on the show a couple times, and it's like all of these people started coming on that show here and there. So
was that your first guest?
No, I don't think so. I think our first guest actually was the creator of Eberron. Keith Baker, I believe, was actually our first guest. And then Keith had so much fun. He's like, hey, can I come back and can I bring a friend? And that ended up being Mike Selinker. And so we had Mike Selinker, and Mike Selinker is a video game or a board game designer. Mm-hmm. And they had just come out with Apocrypha, I think, at the time. And so we did an interview with the 2 of them to help promote Apocrypha and something else the 2 of them were working on together. So that's kind of who the first guest was of that particular show. Again, big concern of mine was consistency. Trying to get a show out on a weekly basis, not just do a show whenever you have time. So we'd have 3 shows in a month, and then it would be 3 months for a show. And that was really weighing on my shoulders, because I don't want to say I'm a perfectionist, but I really want things to be really good. And so it was really hard to not have that. And, there's no fault on either side. It was, sometimes it was my fault, sometimes it was his. But eventually we just stopped doing the show.
Sure. No, that's okay. I mean, that seems like being consistent, having a bi-weekly show, at least if you have some kind of schedule, people know when to tune in. And I think you've been pretty consistent, as far as I could tell, over the course of the last couple of years, at least since I've been watching you.
Right. Well, we had one show where a guest got sick. He had COVID and couldn't make it on. And it was literally, I knew about it the day of. The day of, I found out about it. I was like, oh man, what the hell am I going to do? Right. And luckily, Eric Scott DeBee, who was super busy, and I've told this story about 2 dozen times, but he stepped up and he's like, yeah, I can help out. I've got 3 books that I'm writing or whatever, and I've got a schedule where I need to write, a crap ton of words, basically fill out a novel in a month. But yeah, I'll be on the show. And he literally last minute, no prep time, just came on, and we filled an hour's time. And it was a really fun episode. Everybody who's listening should definitely go check it out. It's like Eric Scott DeBee returns. But it was a freaking awesome episode.
Well, he's a fun guest. You've had him on a couple times, and I enjoy having him on every time. Ed Greenwood's another one that you mentioned, before, and he's been on a couple times too. So it's funny to hear the story. It sounded like it come from, kind of humble beginnings a little bit, just kind of decided to do your own thing, thought what you could do a little bit better and kind of mold it into uh, your own kind of thing.
I listen to a bunch of other podcasts.
Okay.
And obviously, so there's a couple paranormal podcasts I listen to, Paranormal 60, Darkness Radio, which we've had one of them on. I also like wrestling podcasts, and there were a handful of them that I'd listened to on and off. There was Steve Austin had one, Jim Ross had one, Chris Jericho still has one. I mean, they all still have them, I think. And there were little things about them all that I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this one thing, but I really like this, and I really like this. So like Steve Austin on his show, he always likes to talk about people, his guests before they were famous, and like their upbringing and their schooling and like their sportsmanship or whatever it was. And I always really was intrigued by that, because to me, that was inspirational. To me, I always thought no matter what their backgrounds were, that's an inspiration. So if they were the head of the class, the valedictorian, straight A student in whatever, that can encourage people to do that. But if they came from nothing, if they were a high school dropout, if they had, mental health issues, if they had all kinds of stuff and failed, then they become famous after that, then that's also inspirational. So to me, no matter what their background was, that is meaningful. And so I liked that about it. And so I took that. I was like, I want to do that. I want to make sure to try and cover some of where these people come from. And I don't do it for every episode because it gets old and cliched sometimes. And some of them have talked about it a million times. The more well-known ones, they're always asked, how did you get into the board game industry? I'm sure they're asked a million times. And so I try and find other ways around it, because that's another thing. I hate listening to the same questions that they've answered on 30 shows.
Mm-hmm. Sure, especially if you follow somebody. But learning those origin stories, learning how they've gotten there is, not only interesting, but inspirational, like you said. I mean, if they come from humble beginnings, if they've got, everybody's got a different way of getting there, and no one way to get there is suitable for everybody. I mean, there's another question that people ask just about every one of their authors and game board design, like, how do you get in? How do you do this? How do you break into the industry? They bet you they get asked that thousands, hundreds of times, and their way of getting in may not be the way that you get in.
They're almost never the same either.
They're never the same.
Never the only one thing that I hear consistently from everybody, and it's from authors. Every single one of them says, if you're starting out on your own, get an editor. Every single one of them says it. Get an editor. So if you're an author, every single author we've had on has said, either on the show or on the side or afterwards, they've said, get a freaking editor. So
I agree 100%. Even if you are an editor and did your own thing, get another editor. Another set of eyes on something that you've done is huge, because you have been saturated with it. It's hard to look at something with a fresh pair of eyes when it's your own work and you've looked at it for so long. Sometimes on a project, you kind of put it away, come back to it 2 weeks, you can kind of get those fresh eyes. But having somebody else look at it, say, hey, this isn't I don't get what you're doing here, is pretty important. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's how to go back, that's how I started this. As I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. Let's do it. Let's start this show. Let's start this interview show where we interview these guests. And my biggest tackling was, where the F do I start? That was it. Because the other one, we had established us as a podcast. We already had a show, but it wasn't that show. It wasn't interviews. So how do you start off an interview show with no history, with no background, and try and have a credible guest list? Because I could interview Joe Blow from the game store down the road, but that's not really a credible, it's credible in the way that he runs the company or whatever, or a business, but it's not the same as this is a published author who sold 500,000 books. It's not necessarily the same thing.
What can I ask you something? Why did you want to even do this? Why did you want to do it?
It's a passion. I've listened, like I said, I love podcasts. I love listening to them. I worked in radio. Like growing up, I wanted to be working radio. I wanted to be a DJ. Um, Unfortunately, I went to college for it, and I didn't have the, let's just say I was a young, stupid kid that just wanted to go hang out with his friends and play games and role play and didn't want to focus on college schoolwork and stuff like that. Like I just spent 12 years in high school and elementary school slaving over books. It just wasn't I had a hard time wanting to do that because I figured like I could just do this whenever. Young kids always think hey, I have my entire life to do this. I'm going to take some fun time for myself. And it just didn't work out. And so this is fulfilling that love that I have. It's not exactly the same, but it's the modern equivalent of being a radio DJ. Like not a lot. I don't want to say not a lot of people listen to radio anymore because they sure do, but radio's not the same as it used to be.
Right, that's true. I don't think anybody's journey is how they have it laid out.
No,
for the most part.
No.
I mean, yeah, I believe if correct me if I'm wrong, but you used to actually to be a wrestler. You tried some other things. Some stuff didn't work out. You just kind of, this is a thing where I don't want to say reinventing yourself, but just pursuing your passions, pursuing your things that you love to do. I know you love role playing. You host a D&D stream constantly. I mean, that's pretty consistent, and it's just something that you love to do. And so giving back kind of to the community by interviewing some of these people who have created the games that you play, some of the ones that you're interested in playing, I think just kind of gives back a little bit to the enjoyment that you love so much.
Yeah, performing is always been a passion. I didn't know it when I was little, but it was. And so yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's then giving back, not just giving back to the people listening, but giving back to the creators, because it gives them validation to know people want to listen to them. I can guarantee you that a handful of the board game designers that come on the show, like they know they have board games that are loved and played, but they don't always get calls to be like, hey, you want to be on a show and talk about yourself and talk about your product? Because yes, it's about them. And yes, I want to promote their stuff, but it's also about them personally, the guest.
Yes.
It's not just about like, well, how did you design this game? And well, let's talk about the minute details. Why did you choose the meeples to be shaped like bananas? Whatever. That's not the focus of it. The focus is the guest and not necessarily just their products.
But those stories are interesting. I think I even okay, so coming from, like, to be honest with you, I'm not a board gamer, right? But when you have those guests on, they still are doing a creative process that interests me into, how they came up with this. What was their mindset? What was their process into, doing these different things? And a lot of them come on here and it's so complex. Like they really took care and love and thought into what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have more to add to that. I just don't. I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. But what I do want to talk about, I want to switch gears real quick because we were talking about getting the stream started, right? And I know that we have people in our live chat. People are asking questions. We will get to live chat questions afterwards. If I see ones that stand out, I will get to them. But yeah, how do we get that started? How do we get that first couple of guests? And it just happened to be the fact that I had a handful of guests from the Side Project podcast that came on the show, and they knew me from that, and we garnered a reputation with them. So they knew our names. Well, they knew mine. Ed kind of peripherally remembered me. And so it was a matter of, okay, if I can start with all the people we had on that show and have them all on this show, if I can just say, hey, do you remember me from this podcast that I was a part of, that we interviewed you? Because I'm doing this new show that I'm running. It's going to be on, and I explained kind of what my elevator speech was essentially of what the show was going to be. So at first, I was banking off of the credibility of the old podcast with these guests. I was using that to get the guests to come back on the show because they had already had this repertoire or rapport, wrong word, this rapport with me. And so I was like, hey, the first person I called I emailed was Chris Jackson. He's an author. We had such an amazing chemistry and we got along so well on the first interview that I just was like, I want him to be the first episode because it's going to knock it out of the park. And so, of course, we set up that very first episode, and I think it was literally the day before or a week before, not a week before, day before, the hour before, it was before that. All their power went out. He lives out in the middle of nowhere, lost all his power, doesn't have cell phone reception, couldn't be part of the show. Very first episode didn't get off the air. It didn't happen. So there was no first episode at all. And I was like, wow. oh man. And I was so heartbroken because I knew this was going to be great. And I had already scheduled Mike Selinker for the next episode. So I was like, okay, Chris. And I didn't hear from him. So it just didn't happen. I was like, it's not like him to not say something. So I know he's not ghosting me. But I really felt I was really stressed out, and I didn't hear back from him until the next night. And he was he was upset because he was really looking forward to it because we hadn't talked in a while. So we rescheduled him for like 2 or 3 episodes down the road, and the first episode happened to be then Mike Selinker, and I still got that amazing first episode. Mike was great. He was great to talk to. He was a lot of fun. He is really passionate about his work. So yeah, that was that. So I definitely want to thank Chris. I want to thank Mike. We also set up a few other people, and I want to thank them. We were going to have a 2-spot episode. It was going to be Kevin Gleasing and Hal Greenberg of Samurai Sheepdog. Hal Greenberg owns and runs Samurai Sheepdog, which is a gaming company. And he got sick. I think it was COVID actually. And he got sick and he couldn't make it. So it was just me and Kevin, who I only knew Kevin peripherally. So Kevin Gleasing, who is his lead RPG designer, it was just me and him. And it was a great show as well. And so I want to thank them guys for being on the show with no history of it whatsoever. Obviously, we mentioned Eric Scott to be came on the show with, no product given. And of course, Richard Lee Byers, who is super well known for D&D. He did the Marvel Asgardian series. He's still working on the Marvel Asgardian series. And of course, Ed Greenwood. All of those guys just without a moment's notice, without having a backlog of episodes, without having a history, just having chatted with me before, they all said, yeah, I'm in. Hands down, I am in. I'm going to be part of the new show. I can't wait. So I was like, with these 6 guys, 7 guys originally, but with these six or 7 guys, I have a backbone to work off of to get other guests. Mm-hmm. And I can't thank them enough for being, for saying, yes, I'll be part of this show that doesn't have a history yet and doesn't have a fan base and doesn't have anything, right, and helping me out.
Well, I think I don't speak for just myself, but I think we should thank you for not taking that first episode as a bad omen and just folding your tent and saying, you know what? Nope, this is not going to work. This is not for me. And you just persevered and went on to the next thing. But I'm sure it was stressful. Obviously, that was your first one and it didn't quite work out. But I know that you've had, like you mentioned, another head guest of yours got sick last minute and you were able to get somebody else on. So in essence, you really are able to switch gears. You really are able to, do that. And you actually do that during interviews. You change gears, you switch it up, and you're able to kind of do things on the fly while you're doing the interviews. That's what makes you a good interviewer. That's why people tune in each and every time you do this.
I have to say, if anybody else does a podcast or does an interview, there is a key that I forgot from when I went to school for radio, when I did the other interviews. I've got a degree in communication. So like speeches and stuff like that is kind of my forte. My focus was social media and marketing, but I wanted to also do PR work. So I got a lot of that background. And one thing that I learned that I forgot about, and like I say, I didn't remember this till about 6 or 7 episodes in, until my wife reminded me, because I was complaining that I wanted it to be a kind of a spontaneous conversation. And I didn't want it to be an outline A, B, C, D. And if we go off course, well, sorry, we got to get back on track.
Mm-hmm.
So I was complaining about that. And she says, you need to listen. You always tell me and you tell other people, like, the key is listening and paying attention to the words and just trying to remember what the overall plan is and what the kind of goal of the show is. You can rework it, but you don't have to, stop here and go there. And you can listen to the shows. I've gone back and I've listened to them. You can see you can tell where she mentioned that to me, and you can see where I change the thing, because I wanted it to be like that. And the first handful of episodes definitely seemed kind of like they were spontaneous, but at least I can listen to them and go, this is roughly about where I started changing it. And so I have, if you look at some of my sheets, some of them literally have I, A, lowercase a, 2, 1, whatever for an outline. It's literally an outline.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just have a sheet with notes. They aren't in any kind of order. It's just things that I think of. And right before I start the show, I go to my sheet of notes. I do have some stuff that's like read almost verbatim, just so I know exactly what to say. But I look at the sheet of notes right before we go live, when we're letting the starting soon screen start. And I'll read through all of them to get them all in my head, so that if they bring up a subject or a conversation, I can go to this one question. I can go to this one thing. And so that's my key to doing that, when we're doing the live episodes, to switch the gears, as it were, and change, like you were talking about.
Yeah, I think that affords you some flexibility. I mean, anytime anybody creates an outline, you have to give yourself some room to meander,
right,
to different things. But then you can always pull back to the outline, especially if anybody's trying to do anything creative or trying to do any writing, trying to do anything of that nature. Having an outline of the starting point
mm-hmm.
and the ending point in any scene or any overarching story is great, but give yourself room to meander around, but hit your little topics, but you don't know exactly where the creative juices are going to go, just like you don't know where interview is going to go exactly. But having kind of your notes together, that way, like you said, you can you've got the questions ready. If the guest brings something up, you've got a question ready for it.
Right.
So you don't have to rely on anything else. So,
and people might listen and they might not realize there's a bunch of other stuff going on in the background too. So on the surface, especially those listening to just the straight podcast, it's two people having a conversation and we're talking. They don't realize that, okay, I have the live stream chat up and I'm always looking over and seeing it, and I'm usually reading it while I'm having the conversation. And sometimes somebody will say something that completely breaks my train of thought. And sometimes you'll see me like, I'll see
They're
it.
doing it right now.
Right. I'll see it. Yep. and I'll start to chuckle just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then like people watching will go, why is he laughing? Or people listening, why is he laughing? So I'll edit that. I'll have to edit little chuckles out here and there that don't necessarily coincide with the topic on hand. I also have another screen up that's got website information. I've got the links showed up. Also, not to mention, I have notes with links and stuff in front of me. Sometimes I'll have a dog trying to get into the room. So there's all these other distractions going on. I might be in my mind like, oh, I'm trying to hit the mute button because I've got bronchitis. So I have a mute button that I have to hit so that nobody can hear me coughing and choking. For those that don't know, there were 2 months where I had severe bronchitis. I had a partially collapsed lung. I still did the podcast episodes. If you didn't know, then thank you for telling me you didn't know.
Right.
I knew, and I went to the hospital. So, So I had a mute button. I had to take care of that and figure that out. So
I remember that, and I'm like, what are you doing?
and they were some of the bigger
Why is
episodes.
happening? Yep. And you did great. You did a really great job. And I don't know how you did those things, but yeah, you really did a great job. And I mean, honestly, couldn't really tell that anything was really wrong. So
yeah, it was almost embarrassing for me because it was like I was really excited to have Kevin Hearn on the show. I'm a really big fan of his work as an author, and he was on the show. And of course, I have bronchitis, followed up by an award-winning author, and she wrote Star Wars. She wrote Star Wars, for crying out loud, Delilah S. Dawson. So it's like, oh man, I got some of these really big guests, and here I am with bronchitis, trying not to choke to death.
And Delilah S. Dawson, one of my favorites actually, because of the Star Wars connection there too. But also she's written a lot of different things that I've actually, read through, and so that was one of my biggest episodes for me, was her being on the show, and she was great. Actually gave us great, advice as far as writing goes. And actually all of your guests, as far as the author goes, and even the board game designers, just their process of writing really, I don't know, if anybody has listened to all of these things, really gave you some, you said inspiration before, right? And there's some of that, but then also cool tips like, man, I didn't think of it that way. There's been so many moments where I'm like, I didn't think of it that way, and I went back and using their methodology, using their thought process, went back and said, okay, that's a good way to think of these characters. That's a good way to maybe integrate some of their processes into my own. And so yeah, if you care to, I definitely go back and listen to a lot of these things. I know you've got quite a back catalog now, and as moving forward, there's some super exciting guests coming up too, and I know you'll talk about those guys and gals a little bit later.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I should mention, it's not all sugar plums and candy canes on Epic Realms.
What?
The podcast, things don't always go as planned. So
that's not true.
I try to be well researched on all of my guests. I try to have all my information.
You can't admit it. Are you admitting mistakes? You can't admit mistakes. No.
All of my ducks seem like they're in a row. Do you remember me messaging you on the side after a very, very embarrassing moment? This is the moment that I almost said I quit. I had a childhood hero on the show. He's a comic book writer named Chuck Dixon.
Yep.
I literally cried off stream because of this mistake, and I'm sharing this with the audience. I was so upset. I made a major mistake on my background information. The internet was wrong. Everybody knows I played it off really well. It was a funny haha moment. It played real well. The episode was great. He was great. He wasn't upset at all. He thought it was funny, and he said he'd be willing to come back. But for me, afterwards, I was so embarrassed that I literally broke down afterwards because I had this whole thought built out because I had read that he had gotten to write an issue of Spider-Man, and he hadn't. The internet was wrong, and I found it in like 2 or 3 different places. And I knew that his childhood hero was one of the major writers in the early days of his childhood of Spider-Man. And I was like, man, that would be a great insight to see how he thinks about, his childhood hero that wrote Spider-Man, and then him later being able to write Spider-Man. And I built it all up, and he's like, I didn't write Spider-Man. I never worked on that. That's the only guy I never worked on.
I remember that.
And I was like, no,
yeah,
please. And, I had to play it off. And then, of course, later, I doubled back to that, and I kind of just made a mention of it, of him, working with him. And he's like, no, that's not right. I never did that either. And it was kind of like the both things. And so I just had the whole thing wrong because I had mentioned something else again. And it just, I was so embarrassed afterwards, but it played so well on the live stream, and it played so well on the podcast that nobody noticed it. Nobody realized how much it bugged me. And that's how much little details can irritate me. So there's another little behind the scenes. Yes, Nick from Epic Realms does cry.
I mean, that's just speaks to your passion, right? That just speaks
Right.
to how good of a product that you want to put out. That just speaks to all of that. However, the professional in you just made it seamless, made it um, unnoticeable, really just kind of played it off. Oh, really? Internet was wrong. Sorry, I had 3, 4 sources. A normal person would be like, yeah, okay, thanks Wikipedia, but I'm going to check other sources, right? Which you did do.
Right.
And guess what? You came up with that answer, but unfortunately, the entire internet was wrong. That is shocking to
Well,
me.
and it wasn't
I didn't know
Wikipedia.
that.
It wasn't Wikipedia either. It was like comicbookhistory.com or something like. There's like 2 or 3, but they weren't like
Outrageous.
Wikipedia. Yeah.
Outrageous.
It was
Outrageous.
ridiculous.
No, you did the best you could with the information that you had, and everybody saw that, but nobody knew, like, behind the scenes, how upset that you were about that. But that just speaks to your passion. I think any one of us would have been upset by something like that when you're trying to have a goal, right? Trying to have a thing go on that, and have it go the way you want it to, is nothing to be ashamed of. And you know what? Everybody gets upset about some certain things, and everybody has a good cry about that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I really wanted to, I wanted to quit. I wanted to, but I didn't.
Nope, we don't let you, because we all make $0 here, and so he doesn't pay us,
Right.
just so you know. And so I wanted to continue not getting paid, and so we wouldn't let him quit.
Well, and
ever.
I would have liked to say I wish that happened on any other guest, because he was, like I said, he was I was a big comic book collector, and he was one of my like childhood hero when it comes to comic books. But at the same time,
there was a lot of people who messaged me like, Epic Realms is having this, Epic Realms is having this guy, and it's like, yeah, this is one of the big ones, and people were super excited about the episode, so they kind of shared in your passion with having Jack on.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad. I'm glad it wasn't. And if it was somebody else, I probably still would have been upset. So
yes.
it wouldn't have
Yeah,
mattered.
I don't think it mattered really, because I think you would have been upset with just about everybody. I know that you've messaged me on other occasions for different things, and so I mean, it's just something that you do, and but like I said, it just speaks to your passion for doing this thing.
I get critical on myself. What can I say?
You do. Everybody does.
So, what do we have next? Let's see.
I don't know.
I know what we have next.
Do you have an outline?
We do have an outline. We do,
oh,
but we weren't following it. We were just chatting and having.
We were not following it at all.
No.
Just so you know. The behind the scenes about behind the scenes.
So I do want to make another thank you, and this is a special thank you. A lot of people listen to the intro and the outro, and I want to talk about the intro and the outro of the podcast a little bit. So there is a musician named Alexander Nakarada. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but he is a musician, and he gives all of his stuff kind of for free. If you follow him on Patreon, you can use his stuff with no accreditation. Accreditation, is that right? I think that's right. Accreditation. Sure. You don't have to credit him for his stuff on all of your shows and all of your episodes and whatever. And I know I don't have to say his name, but I want to. I want to say, check out Alexander Nakarada. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him on Patreon. He has all kinds of locations. He has so much music. If you ever watch a live stream and we're role playing, that's usually the background music that we're playing. But his stuff is free, and he does the intro and the outro of the Epic Realms podcast. So when you listen to that intro and the outro, that's his music, and I got that from him, and it fits so perfectly with the tone that I wanted for Epic Realms. It took me so long to find something that just was perfect, and that one was amazing. And then from there, like, I found all of his other music, and it's like, I just gotta use his music. I have access to all of it now, and it's just freaking awesome. So thank you, Alexander, for the music you make and everything that you do. It's amazing. So thank you so much.
It's so fun. It's so hard to find a piece of music that speaks to you, right, and gives you the tone that you want. And so once you find that, though, you just know it's like going out to try to find the piece. You're kind of sitting there going, well, what do I want to hear? You're not sure, right? So you just listen and listen and listen. So for anybody trying to find a piece of music that they want, it just takes a bunch of just listening to different pieces. And when it strikes you, it'll hit you, and you'll know that that's the one for you. And that's what happened with Nick here, with this particular pieces. So it just kind of the way it works.
Yeah. The other part of the intro is literally, I don't have necessarily a studio. I'm in like a little, it's a bedroom that was turned into a 2-person office. I have some sound panels. I will be getting more, but I sat down and I spent probably 8-9 hours recording the intro and the outro verbally, doing the audio for that, doing the voice work for that, and then fine tuning it. And I've mentioned this, if you watch the episode with Luke Daniels, I talked with him about it on the Q&A afterwards, I believe, about the intro and the outro of the show. He had a character named Martin in a book that Scott Meyer, I got to pronounce it. I'm like, which way is it? It's Meyer, Scott Meyer, who's the author, wrote, who we also had on as a guest. So one of the characters named was, I can't remember. But he would always say the name Martin. He'd always say the name of the main character. And he was this like old wizardy type of voice. And so I took that as inspiration for a D&D character I had named Maractus. And that is also a wizard. And so I just modified that. And I was like, I want Maractus to kind of be the face of Epic Realms. I want this wizardy character to kind of be the concept of what Epic Realms kind of stands for, this overarching like fantasy, but not, it doesn't have to be fantasy, but like this fun feeling of these realms. And he's like the gatekeeper of Epic Realms, essentially. And so being the gatekeeper, he is the intro and the outro voice that goes with that music. And I really wanted it to be, like a reveal, like the double gates open and the white light comes through. So he's like, says, I'd like to welcome you all to Epic Realms. And then, of course, the gates open and the white light comes in and the music starts to play. And that's the music that Alexander Nakarada played. And so it's an inspiration of a voice from Luke Daniels. It's this music from Alexander Nakarada to open the show to say, hey, welcome to this world. You're all welcome here. Everyone's welcome.
I mean, and that's the welcoming, feeling that draws people in to listening to this podcast. I think, at least for me, anyway, first starting out, listening to some of your podcasts. Speaking of Luke Daniels, though, can you speak a little bit about him, because he is pretty huge? That's probably understatement maybe in the audiobook thing, but Luke Daniels is, if you haven't listened to a Luke Daniels narration of a book, it is pretty phenomenal. If you get a book that you want and Luke Daniels is reading it, you're not going to be disappointed, I promise you.
So many of the authors that we had on the show because of Luke Daniels. Because I listened, I'm like, I like Luke Daniels. I'm going to listen to this book that he did. This is an amazing book series. I should have them on the podcast. And so that's literally what happened. And Luke Daniels, and he's so humble and so down to earth. And he's got a personal story that we talked about on the podcast about his son who was really sick and who ended up passing away. And it's just like heart-wrenching to hear. And of course he had to read the audio, but he didn't have to, but he read the audiobook himself. And just having him on was huge for me. And it's kind of like that Chuck Dixon episode where it's like, I really look up to this guy and he is so cool and down to earth. And I was having a really horrible day. Behind the scenes moment, I was having a horse crap day. My entire day was one bad thing after another. And it was like bad mood to worse mood to epically worse mood. And I was sitting there because we start at about a half hour before the show starts. And I was sitting there on our meeting call and it was just the screen that I was on, and I was just kind of like taking notes and writing stuff down and going over my routine, kind of in this funk. I was just like so frustrated and angry at the everything that's happened today and stressed out. His face pops up on the screen and he goes, "Oh, hello there," or whatever he said. He said something about a greeting like hello, and instantly I went from the worst day ever to, oh my God, this is so cool. This guy's awesome. I'm in such a great mood. Like that. Like he just had that effect on me. Like the day was so awesome. That episode was one of my favorites and probably always will be. And I just felt, I know there's a thing we've talked about when you see someone a lot, especially when it comes to people who are like streamers or whatever, where you feel like you know them, even though they don't know you at all. It was talked about on our last Game Masters workshop with Robert Hartley. He mentioned it. And it was just so, I kind of had that feeling like, I know this guy. He doesn't know me. I don't really know him other than what he, the work he's done and the interviews he's done and whatnot. But there was still I felt this really good chemistry between us chatting, and it was a lot of fun. So there's the little behind the scenes and a little chat about Luke Daniels.
Well, I know that some people are mentioning too in chat that people don't really notice that you're having a bad day.
Right.
People don't really notice that you are struggling, and that just speaks volumes to what you're trying to produce. This is the thing you're trying to do, and you just go out and you do it no matter what is happening in your personal life, what's happening to you on a daily basis, whatever it might be. And you're trying to produce something. This is your passion, and it really, really shows on every single episode, I believe, and I think chat would agree with me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's helpful to know that, and I feel like I got to be professional. That was one of the other major things from some of the other shows that I've listened to and worked with and worked on, is I always felt like, is this professional? Is this conversation professional? Is this XYZ? Is this the way that I'm interacting with them offline? Is this Twitter post? Is this whatever? Are they professional? And I'm always like, I always try to strive to do that. And obviously there are points where it doesn't happen and we all make jokes like, totally profesh, good job. And
right. Yep.
It's true, but not everybody's perfect. You can't be perfect. And I have to constantly remind myself that nothing's going to be perfect. There are going to be errors. Even Jimmy Fallon makes errors on the Tonight Show. It happens. So I just have to keep that in mind.
Errors in and of itself can make the show too. Just like you said, when you made an error with Chuck Dixon, that actually ended up being kind of funny and endearing just a little bit, right?
Lightened
because
the mood.
It was. Yeah, exactly. It did. It just was like, yeah, no, I never did Spider-Man. Okay. Oh, I did a bunch of research and this was wrong. Cool. And everybody had a good chuckle about that. And when you do that though, it reveals a human quality that everybody can relate to, and makes the podcast a little bit more relatable, because hey, not everybody's perfect. This stuff happens, and it's not that big a deal. Look at Epic Realms. Look at Nick go on with the show, just like it normally would have, and in it of itself is inspiring. That's to me though.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So the reason we're doing this show, this special edition show, is to...
Yes, why do you have me on here? What is even happening right now?
It was to de-stress me out a little bit, because we have Gen Con coming up, and I really couldn't... I was like, I don't really want to schedule a episode like right before I leave for Gen Con, or the preparation for Gen Con. And I was like, but I should probably, going back, got to be professional. I should still put out an episode. I need to follow the schedule. I still need to have an episode. Maybe I should do something special where we talk about the past episodes. So to de-stress myself, I still wanted to do something that was low key. Ha ha ha. So shows us that that's not necessarily the case, because, we both know ahead of time.
You're not distressed?
Nope, wasn't distressed. There's still a little bit of, well, because there's so much stuff. I was like, oh, well, there's so much stuff we did, so much to talk about. And
there is so much. You have done so much stuff at Greenwood, Justin Leslie. I mean, James Sutter. I'm just looking through the list of people here. Matt Forbeck. I mean, you've had so many awesome guests on, and that just speaks to just the plethora of people that are on. I'm excited for what's coming up next for you, but I kind of want to know what Gen Con is. What even is it? I am a novice as far as this goes. What is Gen Con?
Gen Con is like the biggest gaming, I don't want to say just gaming, but the biggest gaming convention in North America. Like, you have your Comic Cons, and that's for comics. And that doesn't mean that there aren't, role-playing people there and board game people there and all that kind of stuff there. They are. But Gen Con is the Comic Con version for role-playing, for authors, for, sci-fi, fantasy type stuff. So it is like it's like the San Diego Comic Con, but for role-playing games and authors and, fantasy authors. Their little blurb, they were like, Gen Con started in, I believe, 1968. And it's in Indianapolis, and it covers all kinds of stuff. Video games, they have workshops, they have seminars, anime, art shows, they do auctions, they do writer symposiums, all kinds of stuff. So I wanted to go there to be able to meet some of our guests face to face, meet some future guests face to face. I wanted to promote the show, and I wanted to meet the fans of the show, the listeners who listen to the podcast and watch the live stream. People that are in Indiana, near Indianapolis, could come. I'll be at Gen Con. I am also, you guys might remember that I did a episode with a board game designer known as Seppi Yoon, who does Fight in the Box. He does Hedgehog Hop and a bunch of other ones. I'm actually going to be working at his booth helping demo board games. Myself and my wife will both be there demoing board games for Gen Con. So we'll be doing that. I'll be at the booth every day, like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. That's like 10 to 2 Eastern, which is the time zone that they're in. I'm also going to be going to the Meet the Author extravaganza. I'm going to be going to the Any Awards, which is on 8 p.m. on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, which is the Any Awards. So I'll be there for that. There's another award ceremony that I think I'm going to. I was invited. It's kind of like a closed audience type thing, I believe. It's like the people in the business. It's their personal private show, and I got invited to it. So I'm going to be going to that. I don't think I can talk too much about that since it is kind of a closed thing, but hey, I got invited to something like that. So I think that's super cool and exciting. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know the details of it. Matt Forbeck, I believe, mentioned it to me in passing. So I'll be going to that as well.
That's very exciting. I think too, also, not sure if this is a question in chat because they've been trolling me, so I haven't been looking at it.
They love you in chat. They love you.
Yeah, sure they do. Are you going to do any podcasts from Gen Con? Are you going to do any Twitch live streams from Gen Con? Is that something in your plans, or do you think you're just going to focus on the booth and meeting and greeting people in real life?
I think, because I've never been to Gen Con and I've been told that it's completely overwhelming for a first time being there. It's literally like 2 or 3 hotels, from what I understand, of stuff going on. So I think I might, if I can, I might do a live stream or a Twitch stream. I'll probably do social media posts. I might do short videos like TikTok or Instagram videos or something, but I don't know if I'll be doing I definitely won't be doing a full podcast there. My goal was mostly to visit with all the guests in person and say hello, and also to network and to promote the show more. That was kind of the main goal of going there. I think for future years, the option of doing a show from Gen Con might be really cool, but for now, I want to get the lay of the land first to kind of get an idea of what I'd be getting myself into. Because I really could just sign up. I could sign up. I could pay for a room to host like a ballroom area, and I could host a live stream podcast in front of a live studio audience. I could do that. There are a couple podcasts that are there that are doing that, and I probably will do that at a future Gen Con. That would be an ultimate goal. That would be on the list of, a wish list sort of thing.
But I think the exciting thing, though, for everybody listening to the podcast and stuff like that, is because you are networking, you are talking to potential future and maybe guests that have been on the show, fans of the show, that kind of stuff. You're going to be making the show in the future that much better by doing this. And so, sending us some pictures, sending us some tidbits, just putting on Twitter. I don't know. Am I old? Does Twitter still exist?
Twitter
Is that
still
still
exists.
a thing?
It still
It's still a
exists.
thing.
Twitch
Okay.
TikTok is
still
a big thing, but yeah.
TikTok. I think that's just twerking. I don't know what's on
I
TikTok.
think it is. It might be.
I
see more on there.
know.
There's a lot of D&D. Well, I mean, we do have a TikTok D&D Game Masters edition.
You do. That's true.
That's going to be this Saturday, which is on the 30th, I think, for those that are listening. If you're listening to this after the 30th, then it's already happened and it'll be available out there. But yeah, this Saturday at about 6 p.m., we're going to be doing the TikTok edition of the Game Masters Workshop live on our Twitch stream. So make sure to swing in for that. It's all GM stars of TikTok. We got Gnome Ann, who's also a Twitch streamer. We've got Hello Operator. We've got Mr. Kurtwise. And you guys probably, if you're not a TikTok person, you don't know who these people are. But I'm sure that you might have even seen their videos on Facebook or whatnot. They do a lot of fun stuff. So, and if not, come and have fun.
That is awesome. So TikTok, not just twerking. Not just something new every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Do you want to know who some of our future guests are going to be?
I mean,
I announced it on our live stream, but I haven't officially told anyone.
No, I know. I actually have insider information on some of them, but
congratulations being a mod.
But hey, yeah, yeah, I'm so special. So I think we would like to hear about some of the guests that are coming up. I know that one of our mods, Bentley, is posting some of the ones that are coming up for the podcast, but R.A. Salvatore is one of the ones that I'm super, super excited about coming up, but it sounds like you have a few more that actually I just see.
Bentley's
Jackson
posting.
there.
Let's tell our podcast guests. Yeah. Let's get into it. I got my spiel here that I do at the end of every show.
Oh my goodness! Get ready for this. Strap in. Here
See, I do the clearing of the throat thing that you do. You don't usually do that because that's unprofessional. We talk.
It is very unprofessional.
But for this, it's entertaining. It's for entertainment purposes.
I don't know that it is though, but yeah, we can edit that in post.
No, I won't. I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it in there. Ladies and gentlemen, August 8th, one of the most well-known D&D authors out there. He created Driss Do'Urden, Caddy Bree, Bruno, Artemis Entrari, Jaraxel, and more. He is the guest of honor at Gen Con. R.A. Salvatore will be joining us August 8th. August 22nd, Darkseid himself from Zack Snyder's Justice League movie. Actor, narrator, performer Ray Porter is going to be joining us. He has a plethora of audiobooks, lots of voice work credit, cartoons, and everything else. He's going to be joining us to talk about those. September 5th, award-winning author Tim Pratt. His contributions to science fiction and fantasy is well known, including some of my personal favorite Pathfinder Tales novels. And trust me, those are some amazing stories. They are definitely my favorite. He's going to be joining us September 5th. So everybody listening to the podcast, join us for those episodes. Rate, review, follow, subscribe, all of those things. Thank you for looking back at where we have come from and where we hope you will join us to be in the future. For my moderator, all of my moderators, Octavius and the rest, I'd like to thank you all for listening to Epic Realms.